Hey, Kevin.
Hey, Shelly.
What's the difference between a real estate broker and a mortgage broker?
Ooh, what?
Well, these days, the real estate broker can take a joke.
Oh, yeah, fine, I'll take it.
Okay. Hey, all right. I'm Shelly Vincent. I am the market leader and employing broker for HomeSmart for 2,500 agents, $5.6 billion in annual volume a year. I am on the board of directors for REcolorado, one of the largest MLSs in the nation, and I am here to talk about the market. And my guest today is a market guru in the mortgage industry, Kevin Green. Kevin Green, tell me about your background.
Well, first of all, we get it. You deserve to be here. I don't know if I do necessarily. So I am Kevin. I've been a mortgage originator since 2005. So, not to date myself, I was in my early 20s when I started, right?
Too late.
Yeah, too late. But I don't know how to do anything else. My wife says it's the only thing I'm good at, right? But I'm a branch manager at CrossCountry. I've been doing that for like the last 3 years. Yeah, I mean, that's it. I do all things mortgage. I also do hard money lending as well. I've been doing that since 2012. But I'm just a regular residential mortgage lender.
You're not regular. You're on my show. You're a big
true.
shot in the freaking Colorado market.
I'm a big deal, you guys.
So, as you can tell, Kevin and I have been friends for quite a while.
Yes,
We're
we
very
have.
comfortable. And, when we need to vent about certain things going on in the market, we rely on each other.
Oh, God,
And
we're going to vent on this? Oh, geez.
This is going to be, obviously we've got good reason to be venting. Lately. And so we're going to be talking about some economic numbers that aren't going to sound so great. But I promise that we are going to wrap it up with some really good ideas for agents, for mortgage brokers right now, what we can be doing. Because, one of the things you're going to hear me say is a theme. My top agents are always my top agents. Regardless of the market conditions.
Right, 100%.
And there's a reason for that. And those themes are going to emanate through this podcast today. And so with that, we're going to start with some stats. We're going to have a lot of numbers for you today, some things that you probably have heard, a lot of things that you haven't heard. But let's talk about the market.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
My favorite subject.
Okay, I'm going to throw out a few numbers right now, and I want to get your reaction. Okay, USA Today, 64% of Americans would welcome a recession if it meant lower rates.
Bring it on.
Okay, interest payments on debt are an all-time high.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. 78% of Gen Z, 54% of millennials have received some type of financial assistance for down payments. 40% of those under 30 received family money for down payments. And so let's talk about a lot of that. That just kind of all goes together right now as to some of the things happening. So, what are your opinions on the rates? Because, they're high right now.
Are they?
Well, see, it's fun.
I hadn't heard that.
You took the cue.
Yeah, no, I'd heard
Yeah.
that. Look, if you want my opinion, something's got to crack, and something will crack. 64% of Americans would welcome a recession if it meant lower rates. Yeah, and that's exactly what will happen. I feel like, and tell me if you disagree, but I think the government will rely on housing once again, right? The way that I always say it is, with the inflation that we had, which was caused by an incredible amount of stimulus. I mean, that's inflationary, right? The only way to get rid of inflation that high is to go into a recession, right?
Correct.
And the only way to get out of a recession is to stimulate the economy and lower rates.
Yep. Well, there's two ways the economy is controlled.
Right.
One is interest rates, and the other is government spending. And apparently our government has chosen to use interest rates to control the economy rather than their own choices.
Right.
And
they're also relying on the job market a little too heavy. We can talk about that.
Well, let's talk about it. We're going to go everywhere today, but we don't have a set format. The job market right now. So I've got plenty of numbers here. 336,000 new jobs this last report. But if you get into those numbers, in which they edit it down by about 30 to 60%. Every 30 days, their prior jobs report, which doesn't get reported on. And they keep saying the jobs report so much higher, so much higher. Well, only, about 78,000 of them were government jobs added in 1 month, supposedly, their own reporting. And we have a record 447,000 people working 2 full-time jobs.
Right.
we had a drop of 22,000 full-time jobs. So what does this mean? It means we may have 336,000 new jobs. This is people taking on second jobs.
Right, and so it's really weird to me too because I don't understand. It seems like we should know exactly what the numbers are, and I listen to economists and I listen to people in my industry say, oh, well, that jobs number is completely incorrect. Well, then why are the books cooked, right? Like, why aren't we just actually getting the actual figures? Why isn't the 2 full-time jobs and the part-time jobs included in that? Whereas instead it's just this number, and of course the market's emotional, right? So it just reacts off of this, but I feel like there's a lot of smart people on Wall Street that know that these numbers aren't exact, but yet still allow the market to react as if the economy is resilient.
Well, they're
and
making money
everything's just
off
fine.
of it.
Right, of course.
They know it's cooked and they don't care
Right.
because it makes them money.
Right, and that's perfectly fine. I'm a capitalist. I get that, but at the same time, it's really strange that we just can't seem to have this crack. But when you look at this, I mean, a record all-time high of people having 2 full-time jobs. 2 full-time jobs sounds like a recession to me. That sounds like you're trying to make ends meet and you're struggling financially, right?
Yep.
So I feel like at some point it has to crack, but I don't understand why the part-time and the fact that people have double, 2 full-time jobs, like I said, isn't factored into the emotion of the market.
I feel like it is, and that's been my big question: is why are these numbers, of which you have to dive into these crazy economics pages like on Twitter and these feeds to just get all this data, and it's just the legacy media is just not reporting it, and it just goes to show you the slow death it's dying, just like print media did in the early 2000s. These numbers just aren't being reported, and it leaves your average person like you or I that we have to do much more work to get to the bottom of real information.
Oh yeah, who you telling? I have to pay money for it.
Exactly.
I pay a fee for a guy to send me a video every day where he tells me what's actually going on in the economy. So I turn on market news and I hear, oh, the jobs report is strong, the economy's still chugging along, and then I pay for media, like you said.
Independent journalists is the only way these days.
Where this guy says, well, actually, that's not exactly the case.
Right. Well, let's talk about that. Latest report shows that 80% of post-tax income goes to housing, car, and student loan before expendable income. That's insane.
That's rough.
That's insane. So we're talking about inflation numbers to the max here. We're raising interest rates. Nothing's changing.
Right.
And so
not fast enough.
Anyway. Exactly. Now, my observations, because I'm in a gifted position of having a bird's eye view of the Colorado market, and what I see is a completely different story from what I'm reading on the news. And it's how long does this get buried before things just crash down, or the government tries to react appropriately? But with the new student loans coming in, do you know why the government, I found out, do you know why the government's not really worried about it? Only 24% of people pay their student loans anyway.
Right, which makes it hard to qualify for a mortgage and start home ownership, which is the biggest staple to wealth in the middle class. No big deal. I think that, and this is just an opinion, but don't you feel like history has shown us that the Fed always pushes too far?
Too far,
too late,
too slow, too long, and then so they raise the rate so fast, and they usually say, it takes 2 years to feel the effect. Well, they're doing it every 3 months, and so they've gone so hard, so fast. What I'm seeing is a massive, adjustment in the economy already that's not being addressed.
Right.
And then, like you said, it'll be too late. And what we're talking about too is, let's change the subject. Let's talk about this. The interest rates. Let's go back to that for a second.
I don't want to talk about interest rates.
Okay, well, we're going to make it worse.
Yeah.
Interest rates are in the norm right now, historical norm.
Sure.
Okay, so why is it so bad now?
Because of affordability.
Okay, keyword.
Yes.
It's not the interest rates alone, or really majority interest rates that are driving this. It's affordability.
Right. I listen, if I see one more, I bought my first house with 13% interest rates. Yeah, Jill, you paid $70,000 for it, okay? If you paid
Exactly.
6 figures for a house back then, you had 5,000 squares. You had a McMansion, right? It just is not relevant. I'm sorry, but and I get it, but it's just completely irrelevant. Yeah, rates have been higher before, but the average purchase price was a fraction of what it is now. So it's affordability.
Exactly. And so one of the things that I've seen in the news lately, the U.S. housing market is so expensive, incomes would have to spike 55%.
Is that all?
Yep, for it to be normal. Yeah, I know, exactly. So what the typical median household income is $70,000. To be able to now afford a typical U.S. home, the median income has to be $115,000.
Yeah,
That's a big gap.
I saw something where I think it was the average home price is 7 times the median income. That's the first time in history. I think prior, this might not be exact, but I believe the highest it has been was 4 times the median income. So we're talking about drastic increase.
Right.
I mean, it's an issue. Not to go off on this, but here's the thing. I don't see how it cracks because there's no inventory and there's none coming, right? This is just 8th grade economics.
Well, so this is the next subject. Why are housing prices going up?
Because there's no inventory. It's that simple. It's supply and demand. And I feel like there's so much pent-up demand right now that it's going to go right back to a bloodbath, worse than we've seen before.
And so this is some of the math, and goes towards buying right now. Barbara Corcoran was being interviewed recently, and she said, buy now, buy now, buy now. And everybody's like, okay, what are you talking about? Why is it crazy? The interest rates are so high.
Can I just say I'm obsessed with her, by the way? I'm like a mega fan. I read everything she writes. I watch everything. I follow her on everything. She's my favorite shark.
She is,
yeah,
and for good reason.
Yeah.
All right, so, and you think about this, okay, why would she say that? Interest rates are high, housing is high. Why would you do it? And we've seen it before. The second interest rates drop even by 1 point, there will be a mad rush back into the market. Now, you may be paying even $1,000 more a month for a house right now.
Right.
You may pay $1,000 more a month for, let's say, another year, worse too. So we're talking about $12,000 to $24,000 extra in interest. You're going to be paying a 10 to 25% surplus on these houses in these competing markets. So we're talking $50,000 to $100,000. You're still way better off buying now.
You absolutely are. Yeah, 100%. There's no doubt about it. And all I do is try to get this message out to agents so that they can get it out to the clients, right? Because agents, you guys are retail, right?
Yeah.
I have to give you the content, you the numbers, you the stats. And I know that you know this, but I rely on you to get this out, right? We have to get this out because it's absolutely true. And it's just the case. I was talking to a client over Zoom earlier this week, and she was just absolutely convinced that prices were going to come down. And I think she heard that I was coming from my heart and I could just see a change on her face. And I finally, got her to make the smart financial decision, which is not to wait. When I said, listen, I wish that you were right. Yep. I really do. I really want housing to come down. A 10 or 15% decrease would be fantastic. I want affordability to be better, a lot better.
Yep.
And I feel like there was something in the way that I was conveying that she finally went, oh man, he might be right. There is no crash coming, not anytime soon anyway.
Right.
So I said, let's say this, definitely not in the next 5 years.
Well, it's so pent up. So let's say foreclosures go up. Let's say that this even comes down a tiny bit. The demand is so high and so pent up, it's still going to be filled immediately. And it's just not even close to what we need. And now all these people are waiting. And, we've seen it before. We saw it during COVID. It's going to happen again. We're in a massive shortage. They can't build houses fast enough. Right. And so so anytime I hear an economist or pundit say, oh, housing's going to come down 30%, housing's going to do this, they're trying to drive, something that will benefit them personally.
100%.
Airbnb.
Yeah.
Airbnb is a great example. Okay. Airbnb, you see on Twitter, all these trends, revenues are down 50%. Revenues are down 50%. Airbnb is crashing. Well, guess what? They just posted their Q3 revenues with an 18% rise.
Right.
So you cannot believe everything you hear.
No, just to say the least.
And there's people trying to drive the market. It reminds me of the pump and dump schemes, from the crypto stuff that was going on for a while. These are all people trying to take advantage. and followings and build up their own. And so, yes, absolutely, home prices are still going up. The only place where we've seen some big drops are in these major cities that are having obvious issues with housing and affordability and a deterioration. Now, one of the things I did see is Austin is number one for house depreciation right now at 11%, which we need it to be. But you do a little research, they had 4,000 listings on the market. They have 12,000 Airbnbs in the same market.
Right.
And you're talking about affordability and that taking up that space.
Right.
Oh my gosh.
I think I read a stat too that was like if 60% of Airbnbs went on the market, it still wouldn't be a drop in the bucket as far as an increase in inventory. It wouldn't move the needle, right?
Yeah.
And going back to just like the general overall picture, let's be super conservative, right? Let's say that this isn't going to change for the next 5 years. I think it'll go on much longer. Now let's be really conservative and say you're going to gain 2.5% year-over-year appreciation. That's
okay.
super conservative, right? So you're missing out on those 5 years. And this is exactly what I was telling that client when I was like, look, I wish you were right, but I'm telling you, if you wait, you're going to be waiting for 5+ years. And here is conservatively all of the appreciation and equity that you would miss out on.
And then I'm going to get geopolitical even for a minute, just to put some perspective on this. There's so much going on in the world right now, and so much unrest, and the discussion of like we're going into World War III. And I need to make the public understand that 7% of the public participated in the Revolutionary War. 13% of the U.S. participated in the Civil War. For the rest of the world, it was business as usual.
Interesting.
And unless, and I say this
That's a
having
much
been
lower population too at the time.
Exactly.
Right.
And so even when there is massive unrest, even in your own country, the chances of it really affecting you directly are slim. Now, we talk about natural disasters, and I lost my home in Katrina and everything. So when I'm in the middle of it, it's disastrous, the worst thing in the world. But for people 2 hours away, it was still a normal day. And so you have to keep in mind that many of these things are very location and geographically specific as to what's happened at that time. So just because we may be involved in foreign conflicts and things going on, and even though our country seems to be very divided about many things, for the most part, things are still day to day. It's not going to affect our market other than maybe slowing a recovery. It's just going to slow things down. And so don't take those things into consideration when you're talking about investing in real estate. That's
Right.
not part of it.
Yeah, 100%. And then again, I always, because I'm not as smart as you, I keep everything very general and very kind of bigger picture. But what's the general financial advisor advice, right? Which is, when's the time to buy? As soon as you can.
Yeah.
Right? And I saw another thing too that was doing basic math on, let's say that if owning a home is more expensive than renting, let's just say it is, right? It depends, obviously, geographically where you are. Great. Owning is still better because, again, conservatively, 2.5% year-over-year appreciation, even 2%, and then with the way that rents are rising, right? It still makes more sense. You're still in a better spot than you would be. So, yeah, I think it just goes back to, when is it time to buy? As soon as you can. And it's still the biggest instrument in every average American's wealth and their wealth portfolio.
Yeah. Well, and let's talk about this too, is our parents' first starter homes compared to starter homes now. My parents' first starter home was like a 3-bedroom, 1-bath.
Yeah, post-World War II box.
Yeah, exactly. It was, 1,200 square feet, one bed, one little carport for a car.
Right.
Nice yard. And what the public has seen and what we've been building for the last several decades is 2, 3, 4 times that size as your average home. So it's not just that affordability, but what the average home square footage has been the last several decades has grown dramatically, and those expectations of those starter homes too. And so we need to take that into account, the expectations of when you buy a home now versus when our parents bought their first homes.
Yeah, 100%. I think a good real estate agent will say, look, your first home doesn't need to check all the boxes. Right?
Yeah.
Just get in, right? Because you can always keep that as a rental or sell it to step up to your next purchase. I can't reiterate this enough because, again, like we're saying here, the general theme is it's only going to continue or get even worse.
Exactly.
Right? So it doesn't need to check all the boxes. You just need to get in, right? Just like any kind of investing. I mean, the sooner you can buy stocks and bonds, the sooner you can buy a REIT, the sooner you can buy real estate, just get in, I think is always good advice.
Yep, exactly. So I'm going to keep carrying it on right now. Let's talk about the debt right now and where we're at. All-time debt, high debt, all-time high car price, all-time high interest rate on car purchases. Everything has gone up so much. What do you think is going to have to happen, right now to slow this down, turn this around without hurting the public? And I don't see really any way.
Like I said, something has to crack, right? It just has to. I saw this, speaking of auto debt, right? I saw this stat. I think I texted you about this. It was something like nearly 20%. It was like 17.5% of auto loans were over $1,000 a month.
Yeah.
That's absolutely bananas. Look, I've been financially undressing people for a living for 22 years, right? It used to be if you took an application on a guy and he had a $1,200 a month truck payment, no big deal. He was in construction and the company covered it. Or they gave him an allowance of $600 a month. So really I only had to count $600 towards his DTIs, debt to income, right? So that was bananas 3 years ago. To pull 1,000+ car payment, and they did say an all-time high. I think usually it's under 5% is what I read, and now we're approaching 20% of car payments being $1,000+. I don't. To answer your question, I don't know what happens here, but something happens, and we know it already is because I believe also that delinquencies
They're way up.
are at an all-time high.
Yeah,
as well.
and that's gonna even if the market improves, even if interest rates go down, that's going to affect the ability to obtain mortgages.
Right, well, it's so sorry to interrupt, but here's my whole thing: is I really do think the government will rely on housing again because Americans have more equity than they ever have before in the history of the housing market. Right?
Yeah. Well, we already saw what happens when we keep borrowing against it, though.
This is true. However, those barriers are there.
Yeah.
Right? Like you really can't take cash out past 80%. You can get a second mortgage, a HELOC up to 90 in some cases, but that going 100 and 125 over,
we're not going to see that.
We're not going to ever see that again. And so I really think the government will rely on housing and homeowners to cash out, but rates are going to have to get closer to where they have their rate right now.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, but you're talking about your debt to income ratio, and you've got these boundaries that you have to stay within.
Right.
But based on the prices, just affordability of vehicles, of credit, of everything now, how do you deal with that when, you used to be a home payment couldn't be more than 30%, but now to even have a home, it's more like 40%. But you have boundaries you have to be within to approve people for loans. Now, this is guided usually by federal guidelines. Do you feel like they may have to change guidelines to accommodate this?
Again, the Fed is always too slow, right?
We're already there and they haven't done anything.
And they haven't done anything. And the same thing with my industry. My side of the industry, of the real estate industry, is also slow. But I do think things will happen, like a 40-year term will come back. I feel like that'll happen. Perhaps even interest only, but nothing like 2008-9, right? Nothing subprime. Just something that's going to give some sort of relief, right? And I'll say this, and right now, believe it or not, there are people doing debt consolidation loans already. And these people have, I will talk to clients where they say, oh, Kevin, you put me in a 3.5% rate. And I'll say, you're welcome. Just kidding, like I did it. But, that's where rates were. What a great rate you have. And I say, well, here's the thing. You don't have a 3.5% rate because I'm looking at your credit cards that are averaging 26%, right? And so here's your blended rate of how much you're actually paying on your outgoing expense. And believe it or not, we are taking people right now, and this is before rates are going to come down. So I think this is going to get really popular. We've probably got another year or so, but this is going to be a very popular thing. But right now, we're saying, hey, I know it sounds silly to go to 7.5% from 4%, but we're consolidating so much debt. I'll give you an example. Just last week, saving you $1,500 a month in cash flow. Now take half of that $1,500 and apply it towards the principal of your mortgage, and you're cutting 12 years off your mortgage. So I'm showing like a bigger financial picture. Whereas instead of just the surface level, I've got under 4%, why would I change that, Kevin, to go to 7.5%? Well, hold on a sec, right? Let me show you the whole thing. So imagine how popular that's going to be when rates even come down. I have this theory, and it's totally just pulled out of the air, but I think psychologically, and well, also Barbara, my favorite, said this too, is that anything with a 5 in front of it is going to start the frenzy.
Yeah.
There's like a psychological thing with
Well, the longer
number
we
5.
stay at 8, a 6 will. There's
100%.
just,
Yeah.
it's just amazing. And just like you said, my first house was 7 3/4, and I was excited.
Right.
And
Under
that
10.
Exactly. Exactly. So it's not just rates, it's affordability. And I think that affordability is playing a much larger role than we're giving it credit for.
Totally.
Right now. And so, speaking on that, I want to kind of go back to, some of the things we were talking about earlier is with the housing market and, what all is going to have to happen because the top firms that have 500 plus employees have cut more jobs right now than since before the pandemic or since the start of the pandemic. And how does that, everything is so contrary to what we're hearing on the news.
It is. I don't understand. You tell me. I mean, you're more educated on that. I don't get it. This is this is so frustrating to me. Is again, that seems like, if that's true, that's a wild stat. But yet all we're hearing is the economy is resilient, the job market isn't cracking.
Yeah, and so, but one of the things that was reported heavily during the COVID period, which I love to think that's a history now, so is how many people left the job market. Millions and millions of people took early retirement. Many went to stay-at-home moms, again, homeschooling. A lot of things occurred during the COVID era that took people permanently out of the job market, that gave us a massive labor shortage, so that we had full employment, or we had lack thereof. Now, one of the targets that I keep hearing the Fed saying is we need an unemployment level to go up, but I'm like, the economy's not doing so well with employment because it's doing so well. It's so tight and you have such a high employment rate because there's such a shortage of workers.
Right.
And so they're basing this, and we need to take unemployment down. I can't imagine what we have to do to the economy to take unemployment up. How hard do we have to hit the economy to take it up when we had such a massive shortage going in, and why aren't they taking that into consideration?
It's an exact parallel with supply and demand, right?
Yeah,
like
exactly.
You said, there's too much supply, jobs, like you said, and then same thing with the housing, right? Nothing's going to change because there's just no supply coming. The jobs market numbers aren't going to crack, and you're right, there would have to be some sort of an extreme to actually show unemployment going up because there's just too many positions to fill and not enough workers to fill it.
And you talk about, we see more strikes, more unionization going on. And of course, the country tends to be very politically divided about this. But, let's talk about the United Auto Workers union strike right now. And they're striking for a 40% pay increase and some other things, which on the surface you would think, well, that's just astronomical. That's crazy. Well, all the CEOs' pay went up 40% over the last several years. Adjusted for inflation, workers' pay went down 20%.
Interesting. I did not know that.
Yep. And so you have to think with some level of reason that they have a point, and there should be some type. When you've got their stocks performing at the highest levels ever, their profitability at the highest ever, the CEOs are making 40% more than they were. Don't you feel that the workers should probably be able to benefit?
Yeah, split it down the middle, 20-20, right?
Exactly.
I'll come down 20, we'll give you guys 20. And look at me, I just solved the whole strike problem.
And so, some
I
of
should write somebody about
the
this.
Fed, the government
I figured
thinks,
it out.
well, if employees are able to strike, then it's because we don't have high enough unemployment. They need to appreciate their jobs more. This is really the angle that's taken from it. When in reality, there are many other factors, as in CEO pay rising, record profits, but the employees' pays aren't even being adjusted for inflation. And so that's some of the things I'm seeing now. Once again, you just don't see in the legacy medias, that you kind of have to dig these facts out for yourself.
Isn't that frustrating that you have to dig that out and really see what's going on, as opposed to just being informed by an unbiased news organization?
Well, and that's kind of why we're here, because we're just not seeing it. And if people like you and myself can bring this information together for our industry, let's do it.
Absolutely.
Let's help everyone that we can. And so that's just been very frustrating. And so I do want to talk about while we do our best to kind of stay out of politics on this. and then everyone's got their bonuses, they've got their shortcomings. The only candidate for 2024 that has really discussed the housing market specifically or talked about it is Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
Yeah.
And, he's the only one that seems to be addressing it or has a plan. And one of the things he does bring up specifically are our large institutional investors.
Right.
BlackRock, was it Capital State?
Yeah, he's got a
these other ones.
good idea.
Yeah, I think it's a really great idea in a government-backed 3% mortgage.
Right. The only question I have is, will there be enough demand, right, for those bonds to where that can be a guaranteed 3% mortgage? It's a little weird. I'm a free market kind of guy, and that's manipulating. But it's not that bad of an idea as long as there's enough demand for those bonds, right, for those treasuries. But at the same time, again, bigger picture, it goes to show you how important home ownership is.
Yep.
That RFK is taking this very seriously, and you're right. It's the only platform that he has any message, as far as we know so far.
Yeah, any plan. I mean, the rest of the politicians are too busy. This person bad, so vote for me. This person bad, so vote for me. And where RFK actually has had a message and a plan.
Right. Well, it's like Clinton, right? Clinton really wanted home ownership to get above 50% for good reason. But that plan went a little awry, and that's what got us to, Well,
I've never said
the stated loans.
Never underestimate the government to ruin a good thing.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So that went to Wild West loans. Right. That was.
It took us to 2008.
Right. RFK's plan is definitely on paper. It seems to make sense. Right. I just worry about the demand for these treasuries, but. Essentially, that would guarantee. It would be guaranteed just for first-time buyers.
Well, if the interest rates were lowered again, those treasuries would be more competitive.
Right.
When you're talking about, and this is one of the facts that I wrote down for discussion today, when you're talking about bond, the 10-year Treasury bond is a better cap rate than rental income right now.
Right, it absolutely is, and that's insane. Yeah, investors are pretty much gone.
We're living in backwards parallel universe right now that we've never really seen.
Right, I'm an investor myself, and I have a lot of agents that have a lot of investor clients. Right, there's nothing better than investors in the real estate world. They're not emotional, and they're really good for referrals. I always joke that investors are like vegan CrossFitters because whether they own one door or 20 doors, they can't stop talking about it.
True.
They love to be at the dinner parties like, I'm a real estate investor. And therefore, they refer you out as an agent, right? The problem, it used to not be a problem. It used to be a pro, but there's no emotion. They're all numbers-based, but the numbers are just crap right now.
Right.
The cap is crap. Look at me, I'm coming with a phrase. Yeah, the cap rate just isn't there, right?
Right.
And so it's kind of hard to, and there are some, especially institutional investors, but I do have some diehard clients that are dead set on picking up 3 properties a year. And they're just like, look, I'm just going to write a small check here every month, knowing that I'll refi, right? And that this will make sense that I bought it now as opposed to having to combat with 40 different offers all over a list. So there are some investors that are like, it's almost like we've seen that pros and cons, right? Where all the pros and then the cons are high rates.
Yep.
Right? There's one con. There are some investors that understand that, but you're right. The cap rates are horrible, and the 10-year Treasury is better right now. That's the first time I've ever seen that.
Well, it's the first time, for myself as well. And so it really makes it interesting to know where are the institutional investors going to go right now because, we've got a real, I want to say problem.
Well, check this out. So it's not as much of a problem as people think because BlackRock, all these big companies, they own like less than 3% of residential real estate, but they clearly have plans, and you can read them and see in their minutes.
Oh, they're very direct where they're going.
They're planning on taking up. So that's the other question then. So then there really is going to be less ebb and flow in the real estate market, right? Because let's say that foreclosures do tick up, right? Let's say in a particular area. Well, the institutional investor is then going to buy them all up.
Okay, well,
which is propping up the value. Am I wrong?
Let's talk about that because I got some numbers that are you would think are kind of scary, but still compared to 2008 are nothing.
Right.
So the number of homeowners receiving foreclosure notices jumped 34% over last year. We've had an 11% rise in the last month.
Blows me away.
I know.
Don't understand why that
so
would be.
1 in every 1,121 properties had a foreclosure filing in Q3 2023. So, but I think that we're seeing that stress on the market. Your delinquent payments on vehicles is higher than pre 2008.
Sure.
Going into it, I think that we're looking at an affordability and inflation issue.
Well, this might be a stupid thing for me to say, but I really don't understand this. And here's why. Do they not know that all they have to do is put a sign in the yard and it will sell eventually? I mean, days on market's a little longer, but the demand is there, right? Do they not know that the foreclosure process takes usually over 12 months? You know?
At least.
So if you're rolling 90-day lates, sell it, cash in on the equity. I just feel like if I'm looking at like an individual case, right, I would think to myself, okay, I'm having trouble making my mortgage payment, so I'm gonna cash out, I'm gonna go back, live at home, or get an apartment, but I'm gonna have this big pile of cash. You know, maybe I need to figure out something else with my career,
Right.
or where my life direction is going.
Maybe they've already cashed out their equity. Maybe they're,
But even then, like we said, there's restrictions on that, right? There's a concrete ceiling, and so I would think that they would still have enough to cover commissions, cover title cost, and pocket some money. I think the average is like $162,000 is like what the average homeowner has in equity right now. So whenever I see foreclosures go up, I just can't help but wonder, do they not know that they can sell?
Well, you know what's funny is, in 2008, I didn't know. I had 3 different people hold my mortgage in the first 3 months I owned my home. Because I bought November 2007. I didn't know who owned my mortgage, who to pay. And then I was getting threats for like after 45 days.
Jeez.
To get out. And obviously we've had a lot of reform to protect, more against foreclosures, things like that. But, let's move into, let's be a little bit more positive right now. Talk about some of the tools that all the agents right now, because once again, my top agents are always my top agents.
100%.
They move with the market. They are where the opportunity is. And, this doesn't really involve new loans, but I had never seen in my career subject to purchases, and I've seen like 4 in the last 2 weeks just in my office. And there are a lot of cons for a seller with a subject to, but there's a lot of pros for a buyer. And so if you guys don't know, and I'll kind of, I'll do the basics, I want you to expand on it for me. A subject to financing purchase is when a seller who is usually in some type of dire financial straits, this is generally a last resort option, like a nuclear option for a seller who is maybe underwater, but they happen to hold a lower interest loan, but maybe it's not assumable, maybe it's not that appealing, but they really need to get out of the house. And you will have a buyer come along that is ready to pay the equity plus a bonus just to assume that a payment, but the original loan stays in the original seller buyer's hands. They don't do a property deed transfer where you have a deed in lieu of foreclosure that's usually put up with some extra money. Now, on that side, though, the seller is very unlikely to be able to finance another home because this home is still in their name, the mortgage is still in their name, and you are taking the risk of whoever is moving into the home now and assuming that payment is going to make those payments.
Well, we're talking about assumption, then the seller's free of that.
Correct, but in a subject to, they are not.
Yeah, I haven't seen that.
Really?
That's
Well, you wouldn't because you're not.
Right. I would have nothing to do with it.
Yeah, you wouldn't have, but I am seeing this. I'm seeing this on distressed properties. There are groups of investors specifically that go in and purchase distressed properties with the loans that are subject to. So it's kind of like a wraparound. The old school, the seller keeps the loan in their name, and so but they end up usually walking. Then, right? It is like an owner carry, but there's generally little equity and quite a big payment. But somehow the investor uses it as a rental. They're able to make some type of profit monthly off of it. It's meant to be like a monthly income thing. And so those are some of the things I'm seeing right now. Also, obviously there's a big uptick in short sales as well. And with the short sales, the hope is, and let's talk about what types of loans are assumable and what's not?
Yeah, totally. So assumable loans are only government loans. So that's VA, FHA, and USDA. That's it. Conventional loans are not assumable. Here's a fun fact, though. You don't have to be a veteran to assume someone's VA loan. So that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that.
Yeah, that's a very little known fact. So it has to be a VA loan. It's assumable. And these are still rare because you have to bridge that gap between the current market price and what they owe.
Yep.
Right? So you've either got to be, and we're seeing this a lot in Colorado, is, people coming from other states, maybe California, I said it, that have this big pile of cash, and where they can find that, FHA loan at 2.75%, where they owe $300,000 on it, and the homeowner wants $600,000 for their house, and they just bring that $300,000 gap. Now you can also do a second mortgage or a line of credit to bridge that gap up to about 90%, so you still have to bring 10% down.
Right.
The downside of that is right now, there's no direct correlation between the Fed funds rate and mortgage rates, but there is to the 10-year Treasury. So really, we've always said that in my industry, it doesn't matter what the Fed does, the Fed funds rate. Well, until they do this rapidly, then there is this huge gap in Treasuries. But my point being is that it's still few and far between that you have that ability to bridge that gap. So we're not seeing that happen a lot, thank God, because that would completely squeeze me out of the deal. There's no need for me, right? if you're taking
well, we want
over.
all of us to make money. We all want to make money.
Yeah, so it's kind of a hard thing to find. And then the ones that I have seen, because like you said, top producers are always top producers, right? So the agents that figured this out, they're saying that as soon as they even just utter a peep of an assumable mortgage, right, it's gone, it's multiple offers, everybody wants to do that, right? So it's a very small percentage that's happening, because people don't have the money to bridge the gap. And then, sorry, what I was going to say about the second home equity line or second mortgage, that's directly tied to prime. So it's basis point for basis point, right? So when the Fed raises the Fed funds rate X percent, home equity line of credits and second mortgages, they go up. I mean, right now, a HELOC is in double digits.
That's nuts.
Yeah, HELOCs are
yeah, but so is a car loan for most people. So
I mean, HELOC applications are down in the gutter right now. Because people find out it's 10.9%, interest only.
But if you're trying to do debt consolidation on a 26% credit card,
call me, I'll put you in 8%.
Exactly.
But yeah, so it's few and far between, but it's only government loans that are assumable. So again, FHA, VA, USDA.
Yep. So then, for those non-assumable loans, it would have to be a seller or buyer agreeing to something along the lines of a subject to, plus some serious premiums paid for that as well. And so, foreclosures are going to be up. I hate that. I hate that so many homeowners don't realize what their options are, but they're going up, and I that will put more houses back on the market, new builds, and I know that you just chomping at the bit to talk about why you don't use a new builds mortgage company, but there's ups and downs.
There are ups and downs. I mean, usually it's kind of a smoke and mirrors show, right? So this is
you're going to pay one way or another.
Right. So no one's doing mortgages for free. So I have a lot of times I'll have a client say, hey, Kevin, we're going to go with the builder's lender because they're giving us a $10,000 credit, right? And I said, well, hang on a second. Let me just be a second pair of eyes. Like, just send that over. Let me at least take a look at it. And what I see is there's $20,000 in closing costs.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. And what's an average closing cost?
Well, 6,000
like
to 7,000, depending on the price point. So I just had one, for example, it was a $650,000 purchase price. They were putting 10% down, and there was about $18,000 in closing costs. But then there was this $10,000 credit, right? Well, my closing costs, all said and done, with the high taxes of a new build, everything all in, was like $6,200, right?
Yeah.
So I might not have this big shiny $10,000 credit. But look at how much you're bringing cash to close. You're bringing less with me, and I have the same rate. And in this case, I was an eighth of a percent lower. So
well, you pay for it. Usually, it's a little bit higher rate. I've noticed you get all this big credit up front, but you're going to pay like an eighth to a quarter, usually higher. In my experience,
it's always easy to beat a builder's lender on rate, right? It's this kind of cup show, smoke and mirrors thing with the lender credit. Now, With that being said, here comes the self-deprecating part. Two things. One, whenever they're, and I don't know why this isn't policed more, but whenever they're doing things that are incentive for the house, obviously I'm out of the mix, right? If they're giving you a free washer and dryer, or they're going to do this upgrade if you use their mortgage lender, which is steering, by the way, and highly illegal. But, you know, I'm not one to call the cops. But the point is, I can't do anything about that. Any kind of incentive that has to do with the actual home itself, obviously I'm squeezed out of that right now. What's happening right now, why am I talking about this? But this is what's happening. So any clients that are listening to this, any consumers out there, it really is a good time right now with certain builders, because what they're doing is they're taking margin off of the house, their profit margin, and they're buying the rates down way below market value. I think I saw like D.R. Horton
I've
or
seen full
Lennar.
points.
Yeah, you know,
Full points.
You know,
It's
and they're
amazing.
paying for that. So if you can go buy a new build, and even if they're charging a premium on the house, you know, say they're charging you 20 or 30,000 more, but then they're giving you 20 or 30,000 on a permanent buy down on that rate. I can't really argue that that's not a good deal right now. It might be one of the only opportunities right now for a first-time buyer.
Yeah, but on an existing home, rather than lowering the price of a home, sellers can also offer buy downs as well.
They can, yeah, 100%. And it's just, you know, if you're after a new build, you can get that. But if you're after just existing home sales as well, you can also get that. I think it was Megan Allers said something like over 60% of contracts last month had seller concessions, and I think the average was 11,000. So my whole message for the last few weeks to real estate agents has been this. If rates were 1 to 2 or even 3% lower than they are now, would you sell more real estate?
Yeah.
Yes. Then why don't you? Then why don't you? Because right now we're actually offering self-plug here. We're doing a 1.0 buy down where I'm covering the cost, right? So right from the jump, your buyer's getting 1% lower for the first year. That's not asking the seller for any money and not asking the buyer for any money. The buyer can't pay it anyway. So I'm covering that. So what that means is if you ask for 2-1 money, which is cheaper than 3-2-1 money, I can turn that 2-1 money into a 3-2-1 for the buyer.
Okay.
So market rates are so high right now that no one's getting a market rate.
Exactly.
No one's getting
well,
it.
And that's it. The home prices have still gone up 2%
Right.
in this market, and which goes against what all the pundits are saying and predicting, because the demand is there. They can't build the houses fast enough, and so you think, okay, well, the only options I have now are new builds. Okay, good luck getting a home right now in a new build in the next year.
Very true.
And obviously, from a brokerage side perspective, the extremely loose governing of new build contracts is a massive risk to buyers.
It's always in the builder's favor.
It's always in the builder's favor, and the least gross negligence I tend to see is the builder will say we'll have it in 90 to 120 days, and you're 9 months out.
Oh, you're
and
just
they're
at the mercy of it.
and you have absolutely no, nothing to push back with.
Right.
And so that's been, a lot of challenges, and because the new builds are such a big thing right now, I think that there's going to be more pressure as we move on. They're going to see more and more complaints come in that's going to push for better control.
I hope
governance.
that you're right. Yeah, there's pros and cons to both, right? But right now, I think existing home sales is better, and I'm not just saying that because these builders are offering rates that are just so below market. Because, like you said, we can get below market rates. In fact, it's common. It's actually the norm. Right now is to get seller money in some capacity to some degree. So, and that's going to go away because as soon as, again, rates are perceived to be down, then it's going to be multiple offers, and sellers are going to have all the power.
Massive premiums,
Sellers
well beyond whatever interest you're paying right now.
Right, and another message too for agents to get out to first-time buyers is right now I'm seeing DPA, down payment assistance, get accepted more than ever. It used to be this whole stigma, right?
And you got to have more down payment more than ever because of the affordability issues.
Right, exactly. So you get it. If you're a seller and you're looking at 20 offers and one's down payment assistance, you're going to ball it up and throw it in the trash. But now, when you've been sitting on the market for 45 days and you've had 2 lowball offers and this one's at list and it's down payment assistance, it looks pretty good. So now is this like window of opportunity for first-time buyers to use down payment assistance. And I'm telling you, that window is closing faster than we think.
Yeah. Well, there's only so many funds set aside for it too.
This is true.
It will run out. And so, basically right now, people aren't going to sell unless they have to.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about that. Who has to sell still? Probate.
Yep.
Death.
Life events.
Divorce, transfers.
Mm-hmm.
Especially in our market, we get a lot of job transfers,
Yep.
military, and so, my suggestion is for my agents, be where the opportunity is.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, it's the people that have to move.
Yep, absolutely.
That is your opportunity right now. And one of the other things I never really see agents do, like if you Google new builds, for Colorado, you see tons and tons and tons of builders. I'm yet to see any agents advertise themselves as the new build specialist to represent buyers.
Very true, and it's an opportunity to go after. I have a lot of agents that have a ton of success too with people transferring to Colorado, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like their entire business model is based off of other agents in other states referring to them.
Yeah.
Of course you pay a referral fee, but a deal's a deal,
Yep.
right? But yeah, you're absolutely right. There's a huge opportunity there for agents.
Yeah. And so I think to, wrap it up, we're going to go back to the theme. The top agents are always the top agents for a reason. What would you say the best things for agents to be doing right now is?
The basics. Just the basics. Back to the basics, guys. Act like you just got in the industry and you want to be a top producer and do those things that you did. And I'm talking to myself when I say this too.
Yeah.
Right? I'm in the exact same industry. I'm just on the lending side. But just the basics. And you know exactly what those are. I will tell you this. Here's a plug for Ninja, right? I have an agent who is a good friend of mine. I've been working with her for over 10 years, and she just always knocks it out of the park. And I said, hey, I want to do like an interview with you. And she said, it's going to be really short. I don't have a lot to say as to my success. I said, well, what do you have to say? She said, the Ninja 9.
I do the work.
I just do the Ninja 9. I do it consistently. And the other thing, too, I know you guys know this, is you have to do everything for 90 days to see it. And understand that every call you're making, all the prospecting you're doing right now is to see a check 90 days from now.
Yep.
So you can't give up on that.
And minimum.
Right.
Minimum.
And it's like, go to the gym for 90 days. You will see it and you will feel it. Go to the gym for 2 weeks, you might as well have not. You wasted your time. It's the exact same thing. What you're doing now is a paycheck 90 days from now. And the biggest advice I can say, and Ninja 9 is just an example of like a good parameter of the basics, right?
Yep.
But just do the basics, do it consistently, and you'll have nothing to worry about. Leads fix everything. Leads fix every problem that you have. And you know exactly what to do to get leads, and it's always the basics.
And how many times are you going to be contacting those leads before they turn into a sale?
The follow-up is, I think, 12.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like 12 times, so,
Well, and 90% of agents give up after 3.
Exactly.
And there's your difference.
The fortune is in the follow-up. It always has been.
Hey,
it always will
you got
be.
another little
Look at me.
tag there.
Huh?
You're coming up with all of it today.
Fortune's in the follow-up.
There you go. And so that's, I think, where I see 90% of agents fail is in the follow-up.
Oh, absolutely, 100%.
And just chasing and chasing. And one of the things I had to learn early on in my career is not being afraid of hearing no. I mean, what's the worst they can do to you?
Oh, I think you should chase a lead until they buy or you have a restraining order.
Well, you are successful for a reason. It's worked for him. So,
I mean, what's the worst they're going to do? Tell you not to call them again?
Well, yeah, exactly.
Cool, thanks. So since you don't want my help, do you have any friends that might need to
But you said, like, back to the basics, like, agent floor time.
Yeah.
Those basic things, showing up to events. And this is one of the things I just preached lately is, you remember when we were growing up, the realtors in my neighborhood were like the community stewards.
Yeah.
They sponsored the Little League events. They had the picnics. They did everything. And you just don't see agents really in that community roles like we used to. And this is one of the things I've been preaching to my agents is like, this is a return to community.
Absolutely, 100%.
You have a great opportunity now.
Yeah.
To become that community steward, and that's where you're playing for the long game.
Yeah, I like to say that 2020, 2021, and like the first quarter of 2022 were a gift. They weren't real. It wasn't real to have business just fall in your lap right now, to just get up and have your phone ring.
Yeah, but over half of all agents don't know any different now.
They don't know any different, and it is back to the basics. You have to actually grind, and get what you deserve, right? What you put in is what you get out. But the sky is not falling, and I'm telling you that we're on the precipice. Look, from a mindset standpoint, this is where I am. I am planning on another year of this.
Yep.
From a mindset standpoint, now I think optimistically it might be 8-9 months, a little bit shorter, but I'm not thinking about that. So from a mindset standpoint, you have to plan another year of this. And again, I'm telling you, if you do the basics for 90 days, you'll be swimming in leads. That is just, I can't stress that enough.
Absolutely. Well, every agent started at zero.
Yep.
Every agent started at zero. Every lender, every Instagram influencer, everyone started at zero. And until you get content out there, until you are out there for all these games, whatever it is that the route you decide to take, what your brand is, you're going to start at zero, and you have to be able to keep on going when there's still nobody there.
Right, absolutely.
And that's the key.
And you should have a lending partner that's helping you convert leads. Because if I have high conversion, you have high conversion.
Yeah.
And
well,
more than happy to
anybody,
talk about
any
details on
lead
that.
I get, they're going to ask me questions. The first thing I'm going to do is you've got to build a relationship with a lender. You need to learn what is best. And it's like you said, for people who may not even be selling right now, if you're playing for the long game, they need to get themselves into financial position.
Right.
These are things that you can do now and that you're good at doing. Is getting people into a financial position for the next 12, 24, 36 months. And then they're your client. And
Right.
you have to play this long game.
And every no you get should be a referral ask, right? So just real
Exactly.
quick, my annual call is really just to get the agent leads, right? Now, the annual call used to go a little different a few years ago. It used to go, hey, did you know rates are so low?
These great, yeah.
Rates are
what's
so
up?
low, you could have an extra bedroom and an extra bathroom for the same payment you're paying. Hey, did you know rates are so low? You ever thought about having a mountain house in Summit County? Right? Now it's a little bit of a different call,
Right.
but I still do them because I know they don't need anything from me. And my mortgage checkup is, I probably wouldn't touch a rate right now, right? But since there's nothing that you need from me or Shelly, do you know anybody that we could help? Is there a coworker? Is there someone that's been talking about this? Is there someone that's upset their rent is going up? So every time you get a no, and that's why I make those calls, right? Is because I know I'm going to get a no. It's very likely right now in the current rate environment, but I'm going to ask for referral business from that no.
Well, you just always keep moving forward.
That's it.
Top of mind awareness, TOMA.
Love it.
That's it. All right, so I think that we have done enough damage for the day.
I think so.
So until next time, I have to put a shout out to REcolorado, who's hosting us here. REcolorado is one of the largest MLSs in the nation. They won the Inman Innovator Award. It's just amazing what the executive team here has done to forward our industry, and to allow me to have these amazing guests like Kevin on my show is fantastic. So thank you so much to REcolorado. And Kevin, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Ari. This is a great space, and we appreciate it very much.
Yep.